Zack Snyder's Justice League is directed by Zack Snyder and stars Ben Affleck, Gal Gadot, Ray Fisher, Jason Momoa, Ezra Miller, and among others. And this is the recut version of the 2017 film of Justice League that was initially intended by Zack Snyder, what he originally intended to release back in 2017, before there was the behind the scenes going on where he had basically stepped down as director and he was replaced with Joss Whedon. And when that version was released in 2017, it garnered very mixed reviews and underperformed the box office upon expectations. And so in this film, in this version of the film, it features the same basic story where you have the members of the Justice League that's held by Batman, Wonder Woman, Superman, Flash, Aquaman, and Cyborg, who all have to join together in order to stop Steppenwolf from causing destruction as he's looking for the mother boxes. And this was the intended version that Zack Snyder wanted to achieve before he left production of the film. Now, to get in some more backstory, now if you've been following my channel for a while, we've been discussing in length about the DC Extended Universe and how basically over the years it's been kind of hit and miss as far as movies, how they've been released and everything. And this was a film that was actually in talks for quite a while, even before the DCEU started, that they wanted to achieve. And after the success of Man of Steel, they wanted to move forward with doing this whole shared universe. And when Batman vs Superman came out, it was a misstep to what they wanted, what the studio intended to do with it as far as the universe. And so they looked at it as trying to basically take the next steps of what they needed to do with the franchise. And so when Zack Snyder presented his idea after Batman vs Superman, it was a lot of behind the scenes stuff that was going on, that was a lot of back and forth between basically him trying to release his version, and then he had to sit down due to personal reasons with his daughter, who, may she rest in peace, who committed suicide. And basically after he left, it was decided that they wanted to bring in Joss Whedon to pretty much finish the film of what Zack Snyder intended. And what basically over the years, it's been talked about that there was always an original cut that Zack Snyder shot that they wanted to release, but it never got released. And there's been this whole debate about what was going on behind the scenes, and from what we understand is that essentially what we got in the original film, the 2017's version, was only using 10% of what Zack Snyder shot, and the rest of it was all reshot by Joss Whedon for reshoots. And so this was definitely showing a lot of support from a lot of major fans who supported Zack Snyder, including myself, who really wanted to see what he was going to bring to the universe after, what he originally intended. And I'll admit, when it was originally going to be released and everything, I got really excited because it was going to finally show us the Justice League that I always wanted to see as a comic fan and as a, being a fan of the animated series and everything, and bringing this shared universe together. And it took basically 4 years, almost 4 years, almost 3.5 years for them to pretty much finally release the actual the Snyder cuts as they intended, because essentially over the years Warner Brothers always kept it behind the scenes of saying that it pretty much didn't exist, and then Zack Snyder finally came out and said that it did exist. And so with a lot of fan support, we finally got a chance to be able to see the movie that we wanted to see from Zack Snyder on HBO Max that came out. And other than the new scenes that were filmed, about 5 minutes of footage that was filmed for the movie last year, the movie is essentially what Zack Snyder intended to shoot, with additional CGI and everything that was added with the additional budget that they gave him when he was able to release it on HBO Max. And so upon seeing the film, I can honestly say that this was everything that I really wanted to see out of the Justice League cut that we didn't see. And I'll admit that looking back on it, I like the original version that we got, the one that was released in 2017, even though it is very flawed, and I get that. And it is definitely a very flawed movie, and it's a step down compared to, what we have gotten with the other DCU movies and everything. But I still like that movie for what it is and everything, but upon seeing this film, this is everything that I wanted to see out of that cut. And this was a vast improvement of what I wanted to see, what Zack Snyder wanted to do with this universe. And this finally showed a lot of hope that we wanted to see with him trying to build this world that he established, starting with Man of Steel. And everything that I seen in this cut really improved so much, being to the point that I really wish, I hope and wish that we finally see more of what Zack Snyder can do if he ever follows up in a future film. But before getting into more of that, to get my pros out of the way, with the original version that Snyder intended, there's a lot of more world building and a lot of more of the mythos that's established in this that we didn't get in the other version that Joss Whedon did. In this version, we get more backstory that's involved with Steppenwolf. We get more character arcs that are more fleshed out with Aquaman and Cyborg and even Flash, and to some extent, and they are all very fleshed out more so into this. And it is a 4-hour movie, and it can be, I understand it can be very tiresome for those that are, watching these type of movies that, the length maybe seem very extensive, but it did pay off in what it was trying to achieve. And for what Snyder accomplished, he was able to achieve with being able to flesh out a lot of the backstory that we wanted to see with these characters, especially Cyborg. Because when I watched the other cut of Justice League, I was very, kind of disappointed that we didn't really get to see, we got very little hints of what the backstory was with Cyborg and Flash and even bits of Aquaman. And so with this version, we were able to establish more of what we wanted to see with these characters. And not only did it help with their backstory, with their story arcs, with how they enhance themselves, especially with Cyborg, who, arguably he is the heart of the movie, because, with dealing with his backstory about having to, be very estranged from his father, and everything, really showed a lot more of the dynamic in this version, a lot to a T, and I thought it really helped a lot, and it improved a lot of the performance of Ray Fisher too, and I thought that he really did a great job, a lot more in this version, and more of what we got to see of his character as Cyborg. And in addition, it's also great to see more of the stuff that we wanted to see out of like Flash, and even doing so with Aquaman, which I know it's kind of, like, looking back on it, it is kind of contradictory, because it seems like when they released Aquaman, they had some things that were kind of contradicting itself as far as backstory with which version they were going off of as far as Justice League. Because, not going to spoil anything, but let's just say that when they bring up certain backstory build up with Aquaman's character, it seems like they were probably going toward the theatrical version of Justice League that they would use for the movie Aquaman instead of Snyder's cut. So maybe that was a given because James Wan probably didn't see Snyder's version, but I can't really prove that. So however the case may be, there is some contradicting things with that, but that's one of those things that it is flawed, but I can see it can be very debatable whichever view you see of it when you watch Aquaman again. So that does have a problem when it comes to continuity, but at the same time, it still does a good job with establishing Aquaman's with Jason Momoa's character and everything. And one of the other biggest things I have a really fascination for this movie the most is the fact that, with this version, we're able to see a lot more of the build-up that surrounds with the characters' interactions with each other. With the story is a lot more enhanced in this version, where there's a lot more establishing shots that really help the editing a lot better in this case. Where, unlike the other version where things were just coming in left and right with its rushing and scenes thrown together just there. This one, they were able to do a lot more establishing shots and everything that Snyder intended to do to build up more of its characters and how they interact with each other. And I thought that was very good direction with how they were able to make it more cohesive. And while it is very, there are some pacing moments that can be very hit and miss at points where it feels very, long at times. I didn't really catch it with that much because I was still able to get into what Snyder was intended to do with the movie. And it never really felt like it was 4 hours to me. It felt, like to be fair, I did have to watch it in 2 days because I had to go to sleep after watching the first couple hours and had to come back to the next couple hours. But if I would have watched it in a whole setting, it never felt really 4 hours to me. I thought it really went in a good pace. And one of the other things I have to appreciate the movie the most is the fact that, like I was going back to the world building, is we finally get to see more of the stuff that builds up with Steppenwolf. And unlike with Justice League, we get more stuff that involves with his backstory involving with Darkseid. And in this version, we get to see a lot more that, honestly, I really wish they could have used more like this in the other version, because this actually made me care more about the villain this time. Because one of my biggest problems with the Joss Whedon cut was the fact that Steppenwolf was such a one-dimensional character to where we didn't get much of what really his motive was, other than him collecting the boxes and trying to cause havoc around the world. This one made more sense because, not to go into too much spoiler territory, because I don't want to spoil the movie, because for various reasons, but basically in this version we see that Steppenwolf is basically the puppet for Darkseid. And there's a good motive that he goes with that I found very fascinating and very compelling, more so as a villain this time than I was with the other version. And so that's a really good step up, because that's the first time that the DCU has ever been able to redeem a villain that I really didn't care for, and was able to go to a step up far more than I thought it would. And I thought that was a really good step up for Snyder. In addition, it really helped with a lot of the performances as well, because in this time, not only does the guy that plays Steppenwolf is really good, and I liked his voice, and I liked the guy that plays him and everything, Sirian Hans, but I thought that his whole Steppenwolf I thought was more intimidating, especially when his whole purpose of being able to gather all the people around and try to take them as prisoners and stuff really made more sense this time, and I found him very intimidating at points. And one of the other biggest things I liked a lot too was being able to see more of the world that Snyder was able to establish with going through various points, with going through Atlantis and Metropolis, and you get to see more with the interactions with, how Flash is with the other characters and stuff. And I also got to really admire a lot of the performances, because you can see that with Ben Affleck, Ezra Miller, and all them, they really bring their A game to a T in this, and this was before all the reshoots happened, and they really pulled it off really well. And I thought their chemistry was a lot more genuine, a lot more natural, I felt, more compared to the other one. Even though I have a soft spot for the other one, because I like their humor in the other one, but to a different level, so to speak. But in this one, it felt more natural when their banter goes on back and forth, and I enjoyed a lot of the Justice League's chemistry with each other. And so that really was a lot more improvement in this version. And in addition, I really got to admire the score a lot this time, because no disrespect to Danny Elfman, I thought that he was a good choice for Justice League in the other cut, with using like similar themes of like using the Batman theme from the original Tim Burton one, and even using the Superman theme from John Williams from the original Superman movie. But with this version, I thought it felt more like it built more of the stakes higher this time with the music, because it's Junkie XL, who did the music for this, use a very like rock kind of soundtrack, score that feels very like it gives you that pump, and I thought it really worked with a lot of the action scenes, and it really blended very well when it gets to when the League are actually kicking ass toward the end when they have their climax and all that. And that was a very big improvement, because unlike the CGI that I had a lot of complaints with the other version, this one they were able to do the CGI in a lot more blended in kind of well. There is some noticeable stuff that I will admit was flawed, but at the same time it was able to blend it so well to where I still brought more of the tone with it that Snyder was going for, and I thought it really blended well with the parademons and scenes. So I thought that was a great contrast compared to what we got into the other version. Now, in addition, one of my other biggest things I had to enjoy the most is I really enjoy a lot of the backstory they develop with Darkseid in this. Not going to go into detail, but let's just say there's some cool Easter eggs and different fan service that they do in this. I thought was a really well given that makes you really want to see more if we ever get to a sequel. And I'm sure it's already given the trailers, but I'll just say this, that when it was able to bring in Jared Leto's Joker appearance, that was a good payoff, because not only was it a good basically a redemption for what he had in Suicide Squad, but it was a good way of showing that we could see this performance work in future films. And I'll admit, I'm one of the few that didn't mind his performance in Suicide Squad, but this took it to a whole new level that I want to see more, and I want to see this version more in the future. So I thought he was very fantastic for what he was given when he was on screen playing the Joker again, and I really want to see this universe come together in the future. Now, to get into any of my other clients, I will say, like, much like I had with the other film with the regular version, it does suffer some stuff with, like, you know, not really fleshing some things out as far as, like, you know, some of the stuff that they built up with Superman could have been a little better in some regards, but at the same time, I'm kind of 50-50 on that, because when they do Superman's resurrection in this, I thought it worked a whole, like, to a T, in that it feels a lot more natural this time, to where, well, for one, you don't have the fucking CGI mustache that they had to do to remove his mustache in the other version, so you do get to see the black suit, which is more of a given. And there's something that they do toward the end that I thought really worked for the futures, for what they could do for the future Superman. So I really enjoyed that aspect, that they brought his character arc very full circle in this. And Henry Cavill, once again, does a great job with that. But my only con is that it is questionable as to why, it's kind of more of a nitpick as to why exactly they chose the black suit necessarily, because it seems like, you know, it's kind of the opposite effect because of why he uses his other suit. So that's more of a debate that I can see more comic fans go over. And if for those of you who have followed the comics, something in the comics will how that follows, because I'm not really too familiar with the black suit. So I'm kind of more curious of what the whole, like, purpose is of him wearing it necessarily. Well, one of my other cons I will say is that, yes, there is some continuity issues that they have as far as establishing with Aquaman, because in this version, I did also notice that with Mira, who is played once again by Amber Heard, she uses a British accent this time, and in Aquaman and even in the Whedon cut, she doesn't use that version. She doesn't use a British accent. So that is something I can see as very questionable, and it is a major flaw with the film, because it seemed like no one was really paying attention to it. So I don't know if that was really intentional, what initially, you know, that's what they originally had in mind, and then maybe the other director was getting caught on, or vice versa. However the case may be, that is definitely a flaw that I can see really kind of throws you off when you look at the other films in the universe. So yes, as a whole, the universe itself is very, you know, kind of hard to follow as far as, you know, being scared in parts, but given for what it is, like the way they connect everything, I thought really build it up a lot better this time. And yes, even though they do certain parts in the backstory with Aquaman is another big flaw I have, where, you know, some of the stuff that they bring up about, like, one of his parents and stuff is contradictory to what we see in his backstory in Aquaman. I'm not going to go spoilers of it, but I can see maybe this was basically the blueprint that they probably set up, that maybe James Wan, who directed Aquaman, probably wasn't aware of, or maybe they just weren't touching base on the same field. So however the case may be, it is definitely something that can be very, you know, questionable as far as it's very contradictory trying to connect it to the universe, if you want to go more into depth with that aspect. But other than that, though, I mean, everything that was able to be enhanced with this version really showcased it. In fact, going back to one of my pros, one of my other biggest things I had a lot was Flash. As much as I had him as one of the highlights in the other version, he really shines here in one of the biggest in the climax especially, and he definitely is not only one of the focal points that really that glues the team together, but him and Cyborg, like they really bring, like, the very innocence of the league as well. So I thought it was a very great way of showcasing every character in this gets their showcase. In fact, to go back into more of it, even Batman and Wonder Woman get their moments to shine too in their regards. So it is definitely showcasing, not only with Batman's redemption, doing more good, like some from his for himself, and especially toward the end where he meets with a certain character that I won't spoil, but I thought was a good, like, way of, you know, setting up the future franchise, setting up in the future. But other than that, And other than some like minor stuff, like again with some of the CGI problems like we had on the other version, not to an extent like this one, and there are some pacing problems that they could have trimmed out just a little bit here and there to kind of like enhance the movie to where it didn't need to go to necessarily be 4 hours. So I could see that they could have trimmed some more out necessarily. But other than that, this was everything that I wanted to see of Justice League come through full circle. And while there is some also stuff that they could have established a little more with Darkseid, I still like the fact that they were able to build that up for a next following movie and everything. So, with that being said, this was a very vast improvement with everything I wanted to see out of Justice League. And while it may not go down as probably like, it's hard to really describe this movie without really saying it's a 2017 movie because it was originally supposed to be a 2017 release, but it's now technically released a 2021 release. So, with that being said, with everything that I've seen of this film and the future that holds with DCU, I really hope that this series, this universe actually continues forward because I do want to see more of what Snyder accomplishes if he ever comes back, and seeing Affleck and Cavill and all of them come back and do it full service because they all did a fantastic job and keeping this universe alive. And with that being said, I'm going to give the movie I'm going to go with a low phenomenal grade on the Film Freaks meter. So for those of you who have also seen Zack Snyder's Justice League, and if you've also seen the other DCU films as well, let me know in the comments below what you thought about it. And thank you so much for watching, and stay safe, and I'll see you on my next review. I'll see you later.